Tim.
Absolutely. No, I'm just going to go ahead and get us formally started here. Welcome back to the Community Practice on Autism Spectrum Disorder and Developmental Disabilities. This is part 2, where we get to meet Jenny Bibler and Eva Shaw. They are special education consultants, and we had opened up a survey to ask for what people's specific questions may be. And apparently the overwhelmingness that everybody tells me about is real. And so it was not, there wasn't a lot of uptake on, gee, could you do one more thing? But Eva and Jenny have been doing this, and they understand what some of the questions are and want to talk about the joint guidance for behavioral treatment for school-age youth with an emphasis on early childhood. So I'm assuming you guys will take questions as you go along, but I turn it over to you two experts. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Tim. I'm going to screen share. We do have some information that we wanted to, since we didn't get questions, let me put this in slideshow so you don't have to see everything that I have here. It's always so hard to switch around. We didn't get any questions, but we're gonna hopefully get some questions and comments and some expertise from the field. We're gonna just provide a little bit of information around, like Tim said, the DPI DHS joint guidance for behavioral treatment for school-aged youth. We're gonna just provide some initial information. And then at the end, we would really like to get people's ideas on what skills and strategies they found are effective in that collaboration and coordination, and also maybe what barriers make that collaboration and coordination difficult. We'd really like to hear from other people. So we're going to just, like I said, give some front load information, and then we'll provide some time to have some discussion because this is a community of practice. And like Christy and Julie shared at the beginning of their fabulous presentation, which is really hard to follow, relationships are the #1 ingredient. And those relationships really can lead to great collaboration and coordination, and are key to the communication between home, schools, educators, families, students, and behavioral treatment providers. And you know, those relationships, that communication really will help support the development of skills across multiple environments for students who receive special education through an individualized education program. So the concurrent supports to ensure positive outcomes for students, special education supports and ForwardHealth behavioral treatment can be provided concurrently depending on the individual needs of the student and dependent on the local school district policy. No two students, like we know, have the same identical plans to meet their needs, and services are always very highly individualized to meet the student's disability-related needs, whether it's that private plan of care, the behavioral treatment plan of care, or that student's IEP, individualized education plan. For ForwardHealth, the plan of care authorizes medically necessary behavioral treatment services, and the student's IEP and local school district policy may impact the timing, location, and manner in which behavioral treatment may be provided to students, but that plan of care dictates the intensity, duration, and scope for that for meeting that individual student's needs. For schools, they have the IEP, and the IEP team develops and implements that student's plan. And the student's IEP goals and special education services are written in a way to allow that student to access, engage, and make progress in age or grade level general education curriculum and environments. And that's true for kids 3-year-olds up till 21-year-olds. So the coordination, that collaboration comes in that the plan of care with the behavioral treatment provider and the IEP will probably likely have very similar goals. And really those goals are more likely to be achieved when there is that shared understanding. We have all those experts, including the student, the families, the educators, the behavioral treatment providers, all those experts will see more likelihood of success if they're all understanding where everybody's coming from and then coordinating those services, keeping that child's needs at the center. So special education staff will provide the special education, the special design services in that IEP. And then the behavioral treatment providers within that school setting, if it's allowed based on local school district policy, can assist in obtaining stability in the school setting to help support that student. It's important to know that for behavioral treatment providers, if they are working in school settings, if the local school district policy allows that, they can supplement the special education services, but they cannot supplant, they cannot replace. And then the district does have to consider a physician's recommendation for ABA therapy or behavioral treatment. However, it is the IEP team that determines whether those services are necessary for the child to receive a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE. And then districts have because of state statute, districts do have the discretion in deciding whether or not to release or excuse students with disabilities from school so that they can attend private ABA services, therapy, or behavioral treatment. And that is somewhat due to the Wisconsin's compulsory school attendance law, which Jenny is going to talk about next.
Okay. Hi, everybody. First of all, it's really great to see a lot of old and new friends on this call. So thanks, Tim, for having us. Just so Eva, of course, in her role represents students with IEPs ages 3 through 21. My position as the early childhood consultant under 619 of IDEA really focuses and I represent particularly the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds with IEPs and with disabilities. So attendance becomes a really different sort of factor when you're talking about the population that I represent. What makes this, and so when we talk about ABA therapy, we're going to use that as an example. I know we're talking really private behavioral treatments, but for this conversation, and because it's very common, the questions that we get, especially I get for our preschool age children, is all around those ABA services. So I'm going to use that today as an example, but really it represents lowercase behavioral treatments, and you could plug in anything. So just wanted to give a disclaimer on that we're not picking on ABA, we're using it as a very common example. And one of the questions I continually get, because 3s and 4s and 5s do not technically legally have to go to school, a lot of them still attend a preschool classroom, whether that be childcare, a public 4K or private preschool at the 4-year-old level. Also at that 5-year-old level, for that kindergarten level. What makes Wisconsin unique, and I do believe, don't quote me on this, that we are the only state in the country, in the nation, that has a compulsory school age of 6 on or before September 1st. So here we go. So all children age 6 through 18, children who are 6 years old on or before September 1st must attend either a public school, a private school, or what we call our DPI title is home-based private educational program, otherwise known as homeschooling. So they must do that, unless, of course, the student is excused for those that have graduated already with a diploma if they've graduated early. Okay, go ahead, Eva. I'm going to be cueing Eva in on helping us with this. So the 5-year-old piece becomes a little bit, also has an added piece with our Wisconsin law, that the law, in addition to this, also requires a child who is enrolled in a 5-year-old kindergarten in a public or private school to regularly attend kindergarten during the school year. There is no distinction of that type of 5K, and districts still, at this time in 2022, still may offer a full day, a part day, It could be both full and part in these 5K programs. So we know that a lot of them have half days and a lot of them have full days. I'm going to assume most are full days, but some children actually can attend. They could attend a half day if they wanted to, because again, that's what the school offers. However, attendance is mandatory, and this is huge. This is the big part. Attendance is mandatory for whatever program the child is enrolled in and what the district offers. Okay, and I think Eva does the next slide. I think build on this one. Yes. So what we mean is if full day is offered in a school district, then all children are expected to enroll and attend full day, including students with disabilities. They too must attend the same number of hours as their non-disabled students, not only because that's the school policy, it is because they have that right to be educated alongside their peers and receive the same instruction that their neurotypically developing peers who do not have IEPs have access to. Unless, and there's always an unless, and this is that a student's IEP determines that there is some unique disability-related need that they do not attend the same hours. That's a different presentation even I do, so if you need that one, you can reschedule us. We don't really want to get into the shortened day piece, even though I'm going to bring something up, but certainly that's another topic. I did want to bring up those shortened day. Again, we're not going to get into that. But I did want to bring up, because when I get the question, everybody, which I do on a common, especially for kindergarten and our 5-year-olds, the fact that the parents are asking that they attend kindergarten in the morning, and they are going to go to receive their ABA services in a private clinic in the afternoon. However, this school district offers a full day. Does that count? Can we do that? And so the only guidance and the only answer we have that we document through DPI is with our shortened school day bulletin. And this is the mention. So just wanted to bring this up, that this is where it's mentioned in our guidance, the only place that we really talk about this. So that IEPs teams may not shorten a student's day solely to accommodate regularly scheduled non-school medical or therapeutic appointments. That's it. I think I've got it memorized. It's like question 6 of the shortened day bulletin, and I copy and paste this all the time. So, right. And the other one too is at a parent's request. Can parents request this? So they may not, and the key word here is solely. Eva talked about, yes, if it's a unique need, there are exceptions. There are ways to work with that with the IEP, but just because the parent brings in that prescription from that doctor that says they need these ABA services, or a parent says, I want this, those are all those, that would be an example of that solely accommodate, or that solely request. We also add that when absences become frequent, so if a parent just went ahead on their own and pulled their child out day after day or week after week to attend their medical or therapeutic appointments, if they become frequent, the IEP team does need to meet and determine how to ensure that FAPE, because they are responsible for FAPE, for a full school day for that kindergartner, I'm using that for an example, in order to continue progress and meet goals. So you have to remember that if full day is open to all kindergartners, the school district is legally, ethically, professionally, morally responsible to provide instruction, which includes both academic and social, to that student. And that IEP. So I just wanted to bring that up. That's where we find it. And hang on, you know what, James, I'm going to say, we only have a couple, this is very short. I just have a couple more slides. If that's okay, are you okay if we wait? And then you'll be first in line to ask a question. Hopefully that'll be okay. So here you go. Shortened days are allowed for reasons related. They certainly are. They are not allowed to manage students' behavior, because sometimes that behavior, as Christy and Julie talked about, can get in the way. So just wanted to kind of throw that one in there. And then here we talked about the FAPE responsibility. And this is an answer. If you wrote to, if you sent an email to Eva or myself, you would always get this. as part of our answer that it is a district's, that if a district agrees to release a student or excuse a student, it does not relieve their duty to provide that free, appropriate public education that is allowed to all students, to all those same age students, for instance, in kindergarten. So a district can be liable for IDA violation if it does make an exception to its attendance policy that results in a student missing the services, because now a parent can come back, even though the parent was the one that requested and said, I want to pull my child out for ABA services. If they do that, if an IEP team allowed that parent could come right back, everybody, and say, my child has not made progress. Do something, they've missed all this school. So really that's what, and then they file a complaint and we get in down that road, and we don't want all that to happen.
Jenny,
yes.
Can I try to clarify? That's such a good question. So if the IEP team determines a child's needs are best served in a full day kindergarten, and that's what we're recommending, but if choosing to pick up at noon every day to go do something in the community or ABA therapy, we're not necessarily giving permission or saying, yes, we want you to do this, but the parent is choosing to do this. So how does that work? We're still providing.
Yeah, that's going to go back to that attendance policy, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, Nikki. And it's really what this is all about. It's figuring that out. It's not for Jenny Bibler to tell you what to do or your district to do, but that's that. I love Eva Shaw is smiling. That's that collaboration and coordination piece. So we have this situation, and we have to work it out somehow. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I've got my last slide, Nikki, are some of the barriers that we hear on that. And that's why we're here as a community practice, is not to figure out and have a solution, but come up with ideas of how people are managing that. And that's my new favorite word. So hang on to that, Nikki. Okay, thanks, Eva. You want to go ahead and a plan of return. So we do know that if ForwardHealth member is temporarily excused for attendance due to a behavioral treatment or any other medical procedure, excusal, those type of things, that it does have to have a follow-up to make sure that there is a plan and a timeline to return the student. It doesn't just stop at that. So we know that too with any type of shortened day. So I think, and then here is a little piece too. So there is an exception that, and again, this is going to be a little more rare and more formal, that if, like Nikki was saying, if there becomes a conflict in this, we do make sure that parents and the school district know that there is a mediation service. There are mediation services available to help them bridge this gap, to help them communicate, to help them problem solve and figure out what's best for the child. Because I think sometimes we forget about that. It's not about the adult, it's about the child and what the child needs. And so if there is a mediation, that is a legal binding mediation agreement. So if a parent decided and the school district said, you know what, we can't figure this out, let's go to mediation and have a mediator help us try to work out that situation, that becomes a legal binding agreement to attend. So that what we would say if somebody emailed me and asked me, or a parent did that, I would say, as a parent, your parent rights, if you guys can't figure this out, here is a great option to help you kind of get to that point. And we did offer the link to the media. Most of you are familiar with the mediation services. This was the slide. So I'm going to tell you, and as I've lived this for so many years, in this question, again, the reason we're talking about it is because it's a common question from people like you out in the district and actually out in the clinical world. The barriers, these are what I hear. And so the first one is confidentiality. A school district will say, no, we can't let those ABA providers come in because it's confidentiality. And if they come in, they'll see what kids have IEPs, those kind of things. And we have a rule against that. And you think about all that, and that confidentiality could be a whole nother discussion. But to have an adult come into a classroom, does not break confidentiality, because we have many adults who go into classrooms and assist children. So unless a child has a label or holds up a sign and says, hi, I'm a child with a disability and I have an IEP, and this person right here is providing ABA therapy. So, that's a different story versus an adult coming in and assisting a child. So on that one, with that confidentiality piece. The other one is scheduling. And this one's a tough one, I know. scheduling. We can't figure out, like if we let that person in, well, that's our center time, and we can't have this person come in and assist us with center because we're doing literacy centers. But wouldn't that be a perfect place, everybody, for a therapist to come in or a private therapist to come in and help with those literacy centers? That's just me. Expertise. I love this one. I am the expert in clinical behavioral therapy. I am the expert in education. And we don't, and I have that ownership, and this is my child. I know special education. I am the teacher. You are the clinical, and go away, and that type of thing. So we have the two expertise, which, like we know, is we've seen the whole. We've all heard that when you have a weakness, a barrier, that really it can be a strength. The same thing. So we're going to talk about that, how that expertise could actually, hopefully, that negative expertise or the can actually turn into a strength, which is the clinical versus educational. We have, and for a long time, we saw those as different. We've seen those as competing. We've seen those as, I'm going to go to my fifth bullet, a lack of understanding. I do this, you do this. That's what we have. And so there's not that really understanding about what I can provide over here as an ABA therapist and what I can provide over here as a kindergarten teacher or an early childhood special education teacher or a speech pathologist who's providing services school-based. So when we think about the whole child, we think about that whole child. Do we really, we isolate that child. We tend to say, okay, they're going to go think about, they're going to go to school in the morning and do all these things, but now we're going to go ahead and send them off to a clinic, and they have a whole different world and a whole different set of people and a whole different set of rules and those type of things. So are we really thinking about that whole child on that piece, which really pulls us back into, yes, we need isolated skills. People, the educators will, sort of give the, these are isolated skills and they don't belong in our world, that type of thing. Vice versa. We are an school, special education, and public instruction provides an educational environment for children. And when I say educational, lowercase e, again, it's academics, pre-academics, it's social interaction, it's interaction with adults. So what I like to say, everybody, is we have something that they don't have, and they have something that we don't have. So if you put them together, two parts together, you get a whole. And so that's why we're really here, is not to separate and isolate, but to try to work through what I listed as some of the barriers on figuring out. So we have, and what I like to think of is we have, and I'd love to, yes, that collaboration. And I think we have that word, Tracy, and what we're trying to do here is define that and say, what does that look like in action? That's our next step. So going back to those isolated skills or those discrete skills and those tasks that some children do need to learn, they need to learn it, okay? But they also need a chance to practice it, to take a risk at it. They need a chance to use it in context with other children. They need to hear how other children are using those sounds or doing those skills that my ABA therapist or any other therapist was working on over here. They need to hear it. They need to see it. They need to hear what it looks like when another child works with that skill with a peer or with that other adult. And then also somebody needs to be watching to see how that child is using it so they can correct it immediately and then put that child right back in and then see if you did the whole idea about test, teach, test, retest, reteach, that type of thing. So that's where what we have come up with is we've kind of given you the problem, and we're here to do some problem solving a little bit. Let you know DPI's stance, that we aren't a yes, no, this, you can or you can't. What we're saying is, how can we figure out what's best for the child? So that's really our messaging. Go ahead, Eva. Or, yeah, I think we had just a question slide now.
Yep.
We were hoping that, right, this was just a short presentation. Mostly it was to stimulate some conversation. So now
We have lots of resources.
Yeah. Go ahead, Eva.
DPI has more resources than you can shake a stick at. But any questions, always please ask. Special education team has a help desk, so you can always ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess if we have a little bit of time, and we really don't have much time, I would really love an opportunity to hear from other people about what they've learned, what they know about that collaboration and coordination between schools and behavioral treatment providers. If anyone has anything that they're able to share, we would love to learn from this community.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we would love, especially those examples of ways that it's worked that absolutely nobody got fired or got in trouble. But that it was that collaboration with the district, with the schools, with the parent, with the provider that we're coming around. Again, I love the way that you guys talk about centered on the child. So please, we would love those examples or clarification questions. Feel free to unmute, and if I need to play traffic controller, I will. Or raise your hand and I can call. Looks like Becky Thompson is unmuted.
Sure, I'll pop in. And even I've chatted before. Nice to meet you, Jenny. So I work with the behavioral treatment providers, and just wanted to share some positive examples. There's so much variability, which that presentation was really helpful to clarify, and the resources are very appreciated. And I work mostly with early intervention, so it isn't that tricky area where kids might be 4 or 5, and now many districts are full day K4 as well. So for K4, K5, the school is offering that full day time, which can get a little tricky to navigate. So those resources are really helpful. That was also helpful to see how things are so much centered on that individual school and district to make choices, because I think that's what we see a lot in the field, is so much variability. I do have a number of districts that I work with that are willing to have us be very active collaborators in IEP meetings, or most often when there is some challenging behavior coming up that the school finds difficult to manage, being willing to have us come in and do an observation and to work together on the behavior support plan or contribute to that. Obviously, it's being decided on by the whole team. But so I know there definitely is some positive collaboration happening out there. It is possible. In Racine, I've had some good collaboration, in East Troy, in Brown Deer, and in different Milwaukee areas. So it is possible, but it can be tricky to navigate.
Thank you,
Becky. Thank you, Becky. And Lori, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say I'm from Racine, so I supervise the special education and early childhood for 3 and 4s. And, I'm always, as a supervisor and working with my team, always encouraging that collaboration, right, with those outside therapies and agencies, because, I feel like it takes a village, right? We can offer as a school district, but also at the same time, with the outside therapies, they have a lot to offer as well. So I think that, that communication and collaboration is huge. And I really push that with my team. I think we can, we try to make it work with our families that need services from us. And sometimes it's a little easier than others. If we service in the home, it can be a little bit easier because our schedules, we can try to, be flexible with that. We know that, as a 3-year-old, sometimes they come into the school, but not necessarily would they need to come 4 days a week. So we can be flexible with that as well. So it just depends. When you get to the 4K level, and we offer that in our district, and then we have to make sure all kids are attending the 4 days, then it can become a little tricky if they're going full day in ABA and they don't want what, the IEP is saying is needed. So then that becomes a little trickier, but and sometimes we do get parents saying we want to postpone services right now because we want to do the ABA therapy. And then, we, which I don't like to do, but if a parent's requesting that, then I have to put those services on hold. So we try to do what we can, but I'm always open to hearing other suggestions from other people, other districts, and how they, what ways that they find is best, trying to collaborate those schedules, because the therapies are different too, depending on the student. So I appreciate the discussion. Thank you.
Tracy?
Hi, thanks for taking my question, comment, but I think that we need to really look at the systems that we have in place for our kids, especially kids with autism or even kids who really don't fit into the typical mainstream classrooms. And I'm all for inclusion, please don't get me wrong, because I think it's very important and definitely right for everybody. But how does that inclusion look, and how do we involve everybody who's in the lives of our kids, especially with autism? Where are they most comfortable? How are they doing? I think that ABA is great for some kids, but it's not great for others. School is great for some kids, but it doesn't work for others. And so if you take that look at it individually and then collectively maybe advocate for changes in the laws that we can really support our kids, I think will go a long way for all of us.
Jenny, was something going on in your house, or do you have something to react to there?
No, I was just going to say thank you. Wow, Tracy, thank you so much. I do. I have a bee situation over here. It's okay. And bee as in the little wasp situation. Oh, yeah. So ignore that.
Just making sure you're okay. Do either of you want to respond so far to anything anybody said? And then James is up with the question as well. Or do you want me to go? Okay, let's go to James. James, you go ahead, and then I'll turn it back to Eva and Jenny.
I just wanted to say that out of respect for the information that other people have regarding this subject, what I wrote on the chat was for people to read, not necessarily to share, so as to save time.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, James. Other ideas, suggestions, other things that are out there working? Jenny, Eva, do you have any? I love so the chat includes, Bobby asking, did you say districts have their own policies of allowing ABA and I would assume other behavioral health technicians to come in? And that was something that I learned from talking to you guys before we set this up.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit bigger. I would say I would call that an attendance policy. I wouldn't call it an ABA policy. It would be an attendance policy. If I were any of you, I would check with that first and phrase it that way. Or and then the ABA part is at that individual child level, but the attendance is at that universal level. Yeah.
Other questions? We do have we added a little bit of extra time to this section just to make sure that we had time for you guys to be able to ask the questions and offer suggestions about, because we know we have people representing all different parts of Wisconsin. What else might be working out there?
And I think more importantly, at least for even myself, was to come on and say, at the state level, our messaging and guidance would be, we promote that collaboration and coordination. Definitely, definitely.
A follow-up question on the point about confidentiality, because I do hear that come up very often.
Right, yes.
So is that something that schools are allowed to, or districts are allowed to make individualized policies on, or are we able to kind of help families advocate by going back to that policy is that being in the off room isn't a violation?
That one, right. People ask, they'll say, do they have policy as far as letting parents in the room? Again, that's going to go back to that district. What we say that confidentiality at the state level is that personally identifiable information, and a child sitting in a classroom is not personally identifiable. That's where children are. So I would, Becky, yes, check with local, on their, that would be, and again, maybe it would be on their visiting policy. So every school district would have a visiting policy. So I would check with that. So that's, again, the overarching rule that they have. But then again, I'm going to go back to, however, what are the individual needs of that child? Not to say that this sets a precedence, not to say that we are breaking the policy, not to say that we don't respect that policy, but we're saying is this is what this child needs as a part of all that policy stuff we're not making exceptions. And so I get that one too. Oh, we're setting a precedence if we let one in. And no, there is no precedence, because we're not allowing this for all children automatically. It's not even an exception. What we are doing, and nobody has to know about this, especially if it is an individual decision about a child, that's between the child, the family, and the providers, and nobody else has to know, and nobody else should know. So that does not count as a precedence.
That's really helpful. Thank you. That's a great angle to be able to share.
Yes, it is. It is. Right. And the confidentiality part, right. Again, just having, Becky, if you walked into a room and started sitting with a child, there's nothing that says, hi, I'm this child's ABA therapy, unless you wrote a t-shirt or you held up a sign in front of a video camera to let everyone, that becomes now personally identifiable information. And that child's a child. That's a child in a kindergarten classroom. That's not a child with a disability at this point. This is a child in a kindergarten classroom, and you could be anybody in the world coming in and assisting, tutoring, that type of thing. So that's, yeah, just by walking into that, sitting with the room is not breaking any type of that. Yeah.
And Tracy Bristow.
Yeah, hi everybody. There's been a couple of, well, actually lots of really good moments of collaboration with all these moving parts for some of our early childhood students. One of the things that we've been adding to our IEPs is monthly meetings with the whole team. So our school team meets, and then we also open it up. And you know, it varies, of course, and I'm probably not saying anything that everybody on this call doesn't know, but it varies as far as who shows up, all of that. But that's been something that our team has found that we really need to be intentional about that. That's why we include it in the IEP. Otherwise, it just gets so busy that you know, you'll go, oh my gosh, it's, you know, been 2 months and we didn't do that. So that kind of helps us, just kind of helps us be more intentional about it. One of the bumps that we have found, and certainly I'm in New Glarus, and so we work with lots of different providers. And so some of those providers have, let's see, how do I say this politely? Some of the behavioral technicians are very young and are getting a variety of trainings within the ABA programs. Some are really, really, really very, very good, and others are simply not. Not saying that they won't become more able to do that, but that sort of muddies the water. And I think our team has done a lot of talking about how it's difficult to have a behavioral tech come in and then want us to provide them training. And they, of course, they don't say that, right? But they want to come in, they want to see what we're doing, and then, oh, could we have that? Could we have that? Oh gosh, you know, I see you're rolling out an AAC device. Could we, you know, download that and start using it? And we super want to be open to all of that, but it gets a little messy. And so we've just tried really hard to communicate well with the parents, and just kind of explain, hey, how best can we do this? But to be honest, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does take a lot of work as the case manager to kind of keep those parts moving. And but anyway, so
yeah, I want to, Tracy, what a great, thank you for that example, because right away in my head, when you were talking that example about the AAC device and them wanting that, again, so now your example was, it's going back to the adult, that they need this, the adult needs this. So rather than trying to say, okay, here's all this, here's what we're doing, here's what we're doing, why don't you come in and observe? And that you're welcome to come in and observe, but this is about the child. Well, come in and instead of me providing you training on this device, how about come in and just watch and see how we use it, that type of thing, you know, change it around a little bit so that it's not about you providing them with stuff. It's about coming in and this is what we're doing for the child. In other words, we're doing a little peer modeling ourselves. So now you're trying to say, now you go off and do that.
right.
That's where I went. That's where my head went when you went, you know.
And I have to say this out loud, because man, there are some incredibly gifted ABA therapists out there. I mean, for the most part, I think they're all amazing, right? It's just every once in a while, you know, we have to train these young people, right? Just like you would a student teacher or whatever. So
And what a way to train them with that modeling again, rather than, I'll meet you after school and show you how to use this device. Welcome in it. That's that collaboration coordination piece. You're welcome to come in and watch and see how we use this.
And oftentimes a similar situation happens within daycare providers. Where this child with an IEP is in the daycare, and the daycare wants to understand, and I appreciate all of that. I just don't have time to carry all of that, if I'm being honest.
And what we say about that is, if you have it, and if you are doing some training to your early childhood teachers, heck, invite those child care providers to come in and have the same training. You don't.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Eva, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, Becky had put in the chat, it's important to really define those roles and responsibilities of everybody who's, circling around in that child's circle, so that it's clear. And then that communication, that monthly meeting that the other person had shared. I mean, what a great way to continually revisit those roles and responsibilities. So everybody's taking their area of expertise and circling around that child and helping provide.
Wonderful. Thank you. Gosh, thank you, Eva and Becky.
And Linda, I believe you had your hand up.
I accidentally clicked it, so I took it off.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? What else is working out there?
To echo just what Jenny was saying, is like observations are kind of the easiest thing and that's when we're able to get in, and we've had COVID on top of everything else. So on top of normal policies, understandably for the last 2 years, there's been limits on how many adults can be in a room and things like that. So luckily that seems to be going in the right direction. But so that is usually the easiest step in solution, is either, private providers coming in and observing, or I've had some amazing school staff that have been observed treatment sessions at home or in a center, which is just going above and beyond and is so appreciated and is such a great chance to collaborate. Certainly where things can get messy easily, like Tracy was saying, is if those private services are actually being provided in the school setting. And that's where those regular meetings are so important, because who reports to who and who's accountable for what can get really messy really quickly. But it can be done with intention and planning, and just as long as you're having those ongoing meetings. I think if you're not having that communication, that's when tension can build, and nobody, one side doesn't know tension's building. So that ongoing communication is so important.
Back to those
Thank you.
relationships, right? It comes back to relationships.
Right. And I think it's getting away from, and I think a lot of this morning's presentation I could hear this indirect saying that it's not about the rules. We know we have to have rules, we have to have policies. It's not that. We're not even talking about that. What we're talking about is providing a service for a child, and how do we make this work? How do we work through this and work together?